What's going on, Marvel MCU Skrull fans? Myself and Amanda are back. We are in the past because we're pre-recording this, but we are here today to give you our thoughts on episode 2 of Secret Invasion. We find out in this episode, Amanda, again, full spoilers, the Skrulls are here. And I'm talking about 1 million of them have been on Earth. So there's a lot that went down this episode. So listen, guys, we are about to break it all down. Full spoilers ahead. If you guys haven't got an opportunity, check out our review that we did for episode 1, which again, we're pre-recording. This would have been last week. But like, share, comment, subscribe. Before we break it down, Amanda, we briefly talked about in episode 1. I thought it was a solid entry. You've pointed out a lot of good things that made me appreciate episode 1 a little bit more. But I personally still think episode 2 was the more superior episode for a multitude of different reasons. But as a Marvel fan, a little nerd fan, there's a lot of little Easter eggs that might allude to Super Skrulls. So I really love that nugget, and I love the ending of Nick and we met his wife at the end of this episode, which was a great moment. But what did you think about episode 2 versus episode 1, and just general impressions of this episod as a whole before we break it all down?
I liked it. I liked it a bit more. I think the writing was better in episode 2. I liked the character interactions a bit more. There were more things for everyone to do. You know, so I think obviously it was like an exposition dump in episode 1. And then here we get into like the nitty gritty. The Skrulls affect so much in the world and what they're trying to, they're trying to stop basically. So I think that Nick and Talos for me were the MVPs of this episode. And I really like the two of them.
Great. Their banter was great. But as I said with episode 1, I think the MVP yet again for me was Olivia Colman as Sonya and her whole interrogation torture scene. She's having fun in this role. She is killing in this role. I'm very intrigued to learn more about her, and she was great. But let's get into it, Amanda. Again, full spoilers. So we pick up, and again, guys, watch our first episode 1 breakdown of Maria Hill and her death. But we open this episode with kind of a recap, which felt a little out of place. I don't know. It was just kind of weird, but it was just like, I get what they're going. Because as we talked about in our episode 1 breakdown, Captain Marvel isn't the most rewatchable film. So I was like, oh, yes, that did happen in the first one. Give us that cold opening of a recap of what happened in 95. Then we fast forward to London, where we meet our young Gravik, who lost his family, who's under, now we get this better understanding of like, this is very personal for him, because it almost sets it up as though when he was a little boy that he was under the wing of Nick Fury. Like Nick Fury was almost kind of like a la mentor or father figure of a sorts, and he really appreciated him. And they really hit home how he would have taken that so personal, that his father figure of a sorts, this newfound father, abandoned him, and not only abandoned him, but abandoned his promise to the Skrulls of, again, we talked about there's a lot of pressure to put on someone to find a home, but again, understanding his position of Nick Fury broke his promise. So what did you think about this, again, this opening, the recap, fast forwarding 2 years later, 97, getting that young Gravik in this relationship with Nick Fury, but also it did establish that it was a quick scene, but I can't think of the Skrull's name, Vala, who we later find out is his wife. You get the tension there. He's like, he got all excited. He's like, hey, how's it going? So it established that too. But what did you think of this opening of the scene here?
I think the way that they're structuring it in a location to kind of give you that information is really important. And I really love this scene in particular, just because there's so much that they do show, especially with Gravik, and we need that connection to him as well, and we need the connection with Nick Fury and the Skrulls, given that no one really cared about Captain Marvel. And we're not going to keep saying it, guys, I promise, but like no one did. So we get to see these. I think these flashbacks are beneficial to who Nick is as a well-rounded character, because he's always been surface level. So I think that is really important, but we have to see what makes Gravik tick, and I think that opening really just drives that home in this second episode.
And they've laid it on us as an audience that, again, that the Skrulls were butthurt that they didn't find them a home. And also in this episode, as we'll talk about a scene with him and Talos, listen, Nick, you've been having us running around doing your little errands and playing these spies and stuff, but you have yet to do your end of the bargain. So I get where the Skrulls are coming from. I'm just like at a point in time, y'all got to do your own. You got to do your own scouting. Like when you're on Earth, y'all got 1 million Skrulls. Why don't some of y'all go around the galaxy? And I'm looking at you, Captain Marvel. Carol, where are you? Where are you, Carol? Why aren't you helping these people? Why haven't you found them a home? That's what I want. Nick Fury's just a human. He can't travel across the galaxy, flying across the galaxy, Amanda. We're gonna need answers in Captain Marvel 2. What has she done besides getting haircuts and changing her outfits?
I know.
You know, what is she doing?
Like every post-credit scene is something different. It's like, girl, like, what are you doing?
We get back to the present, or we pick up from episode 1 where Nick Fury, they're on the train, and he's the story that we're talking about. Tell me something that I don't know about the destruction of Skrullos. And he tells him, you know how it all played out? And Nick, like, no, that's the point. Tell me something I don't know. And he reveals, Amanda, that there have been, now I think from a time, and they haven't been on Earth since the 90s, but when Nick Fury blipped, I think is when Talos brought the rest of his people to Earth, or sent out the signal for them to come to Earth, which if that's the case, we know during the blip that half the population was gone. Wouldn't people be curious that they're like all of a sudden, well, I know they've been hiding on the ground. They're not like out and about, but like, I don't know. I just feel like the Avengers that were on Earth, you know, Black Widow, Cap, Rocket, Nebula would have maybe saw something in the atmosphere coming to Earth. And maybe I'm wrong with the timeline, but I'm just like, wait a minute. If they came down when there was like not as many people on Earth, wouldn't someone have a red flag? Like, where do all these people come? Or aliens?
You're absolutely right. Because like technically then if we're talking about that, the Secret Invasion show should have been in between.
Yes.
Like and we weren't, again, the Captain Marvel movie, but besides, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's right there. What did you guys do? No offense to the people who made Captain Marvel, but like, it's sitting here now. They're probably like, in hindsight, this is what we should have done. So we're writing it now in the series.
Could be wrong, but I thought when he said that when they came to Earth is when Nick Fury was blipped, or maybe it was when he was brought back, because he also says, even when you were back, you weren't yourself. You weren't boots on the ground. You were elsewhere, because we all know Nick Fury being blipped was, he took that very personal, as he should. But in the show, they have established the reason he's taking it personal because we always know Nick Fury is someone that is 10 steps ahead. That, you know, now, and I think they said in episode 1, Sonya says, you've always been someone that you can always defeat the villain, but you can't defeat what happened to you. So that's been sticking to you, kind of like Tony Stark with the Avengers. So let us know in the comments if we're maybe missed the scene of when did those million Skrulls come on Earth. Let us know in the comment section. But they have a bit of a verbal confrontation of a sorts, where I understand where Nick's coming from, because Talos says, what are we supposed to do, Mike? I had 2 options, you know, let my people get obliterated or come to Earth. He's like, well, I'm the, you know, he's like, I'm the one giving you visitation. Like, they're going back and forth and whatnot. And I have to tell you, Amanda, I love Sam Jackson so much because he just has so much swagger. He hit Talos with like, you know what? I'm tired of you. Get out of this. He says like, if humans can't get along with one another and they're killing each other, let alone have a acceptance of a new species. So it's like, damn, Nick, you just like, you're really breaking your promises now. If that's how you really feel, if you always thought the humans and aliens won't coexist, but he's like, matter of fact, it's too many. I don't want you in here. Get the hell out of here. That scene was just so funny to me. But also, I did feel the gravitas between the two in that scene that he said, because it is very much true, Amanda. Super villains run around the world in the MCU. So it is a truthful thing that the humans can't get along. What do you think they're gonna accept these aliens coming on Earth, especially after the post blip? I don't think the world's gonna be too trusty. What did you think about that scene between these two characters, and whose side were you on during that?
Oh my God, that's such a hard question. I think they're both like right in their own way. But I loved everything about this scene, because even Nick, the way that he talked about his past, he's like, he built up that game, you know, and like we're getting a little snippet of that with like the little girl that he used to play with, and my mother used to ask these questions, and it was just, you know, it was really cool that again, we saw a different side of him and like his childhood and how he still remembers that. And then he just like went in for the kill with that entire story. And I was like, what is happening? Like,
set him up. Talos was like, oh, this is such a good story. He was like eating popcorn and smiling. But he was like, nah, it's a point to this story.
It was so cute. We get this, and then boom, and we just went like serious. I was like, what? So it
Nick,
was
he's such a fun character. I love Nick
right.
Fury.
He's so fun because you know what? He's so unpredictable too, you know, and what comes
Yep.
out of his mouth. And I think that again, Sam
Hmm.
Jackson, as you said, he's an icon and he
Yeah.
plays it so
Yeah.
well. But for me, it just like even solidified how strong of an actor Ben Mendelsohn is because they're so good at feeding off of each other. And you
Yeah.
wouldn't have seen that in Captain Marvel, you know? So I
Right.
think that
Right.
them as scene partners, this is the scene so far for the two of them that I was just like, I couldn't peel away from the screen. Like it was just so well done, and how they worked into it. But like, tell me something I don't know. Like it
Yeah.
was just so simple and effective, and I was there.
It's a great scene between those two. But my favorite scene is a little bit later with Rhodey, we will talk about. But we see in the episode kind of established this whole thing that's being built up from episode 1, which is the tension between America and Russia. Its plans are kind of coming along. Then we see he wants to set up the meeting with the rest of the leadership of the Skrulls. But prior to that, we have this scene which we talked about it in episode 1. Is Maria Hill dead? And so far, based on this scene here, with the whole bringing her body back, we have her mom talking to Fury, give me answers. And, you know, she ultimately tells Fury, if my daughter, you know, died due to your mistakes or whatever, because he tells her what actually happened, make sure her death isn't in vain, you know, avenge her essentially. Again, Amanda, I'm going to pose it again. We talked about it in episode 1. We now have a body. Well, assuming there's a body in that casket.
Sure.
Is it more definitive now? Because we were both on the fence about her actually being dead. Now, again, I'm one of those people. Open that casket first. Let me see. Check her pulse. Okay, she's dead. I'm still under the impression that somehow, some way, she's going to pop up and surprise everyone. But as of right now, Amanda, it's seeming pretty definitive that we did witness the death of a character of Maria Hill. What do you think about that scene between her mom and Nick Fury here?
I think that also shows like how close they are. Again, like as we said in the first episode, the mom's going to Fury. Like how close were they from the beginning? Like you don't know that, right? Especially if he was like the mentor. But I agree with you. Like especially the fact that we don't see the body. We're not going to get a funeral. I don't know. We could get a funeral in episode 3. I'm not 100% sure if that's going to happen. But I genuinely think, and I'm carrying this over from the first episode, if the Skrulls were smart, and it looks like they are, they're going to get their hands on Maria Hill one way or another. I would like to be optimistic. You're like, you know, we're talking about it. So
yeah.
But unless I see a funeral in episode 3, fam, like it's just, you know
and I think we need a funeral because as we talked about in episode 1, she is a big character and she's well, most of the Avengers that she interacted with are somewhere or dead. So I don't know the new Avengers, which they do something in this episode that put a smile on my face, addressing why I don't even think there's an Avengers in the MCU right now, but why hasn't there been any superhuman, heroes involved? And they say a line in this episode. I'm like, that makes sense why they wouldn't get involved. But yeah, I'm very curious on if there is a funeral. And when you said that, I'm just immediately thinking of those set photos with Captain America 4. Could that? I mean, I don't know because that's next year. I don't know if we're going to see a funeral for a character that died in this show. I think that's a funeral for the president, but we'll see. Yeah. But yeah, I think there's still something to Maria Hill's story. At least I hope. Guys, you can watch our episode 1 review, knowing why me and Amanda feel like she's not dead. Number 1, she's a spy. Number 2, she's worked with Tony Stark. Number 3, you think a bullet to the gut would, you know, she would have a bulletproof vest on. Go watch that review to get our reasons why we think she's alive. But again, the tensions build. But then they have this meeting being set up between Gravik and the leaders of the Skrull. And again, we find out that they have already, which is a question I have for you, how long do you think the prime minister, the secretary general, this government person that works for the president, have they been in their position of powers for years now? Or are we assuming that they have just gotten this position? Like, how long has the Skrulls been taking over these leaders of the world?
Honestly, I think it is since the blip. It would make the most sense for things to just go haywire.
Chaotic time and so much uncertainty. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And then half the people were gone. Like anyone could have had like any uprising. It could have been anything because of the situation. That's what's so interesting about this is because the Skrulls could be anywhere at any time and take any form and all of that. So we're asking these questions, which makes us change like our past ideas of what had happened like after the blip, and it's like putting all the pieces together, this engaging to watch, because we've had so many questions about the blip and what had happened. So it's not like they've all been addressed. So I think that seeing this, especially people in positions of power, it's shady. And it's like really strong it's a really strong second episode for that reason.
Yeah. Because I think it, as you just said, it sets the stage to, again, building us to thinking how, well, not thinking, but knowing how like detrimental and how serious this threat is, that they have infiltrated the highest levels of government powers, the UN, NATO, the US government. So it is a pretty daunting situation. And not only does it go there, but then they have the conversation of what punishment Gravik should have. And he has this moment, talked about in episode 1, Kingsley didn't really have like that much to do. Like he didn't really have that many lines of dialogue, but now we get the most from him in this episode. And he's, hitting his hand on the table. It was a broken promise. We want to go to war. Last time we went to war to the Kree, we lost, but we're not about to lose this war because this is our home. So I really enjoyed that scene. And he has all of them agree to, except for one of the people, Talos let him know what was going on. But yeah. I'm liking the build of the character because, again, he gets a lot more to do in this episode than he did in episode 1. Fall in line. Talos is fully aware of this. It was a little too easy, though, when they fell in line. But, again, we only got 6 episodes, so I understood, why they had to kind of get that ball rolling. But we get a big moment here. Very, very big moment. So we have a guy who at this point, who we talked about in episode 1, she's conflicted. Once she found out how her mother died, she's now want to help her dad and seeing how deep into it she is. So she is spying on Gravik and she follows his second in command. And we see him go into like this closed off area in their compound. He's talking to this Dr. Dalton. You can't hear them. You have to have your subtitles on, but they're having this conversation about, we need to find a new harvest and this, that, and the third. And we get this shot of this machine that she's building. And it doesn't just stop there, Amanda, but we go from there and have Gaia on this computer, very old school computer, which makes sense because they don't want to, anyone to hack into their systems. She looks on her computer, Amanda, and she finds some very interesting information. And as you all can see on the screen now, this Dr. Dalton is experimenting with a Groot species, Frost Beast, and Call of Cillian. Amanda, Groot, the Beast, and that Frost Beast, if I'm not mistaken, is from Thor 2, The Dark World, when we had that creature that was running around. So we assume that it died eventually. And the Cole Obsidian character, Infinity War, it was the child of Thanos, and one cut off their hand and left it somewhere in the snow. So they have picked up all these different. I don't know how they got Groot. I don't know where they found the Groot species, or maybe
it's scaring me, to be honest.
I mean, they are aliens. Maybe somewhere in their journey, they found the Groot's home planet and got a twig. I don't know. Maybe Groot, because I don't think Groot has ever. Well, he was on Earth for Infinity War, but he dusted away. So I don't know where they would have gotten a Groot anything. But they have it. And what it's all building to, Amanda, again, for those that are familiar with Secret Invasion or familiar with Skrulls, there is a particular section of Skrulls that are referred to as super Skrulls. In the comics, they have adapted the abilities of the Fantastic Four, Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Woman, the Thing. So, and they were very integral in the actual comic book run. So, Amanda, we are seeing the beginnings of them becoming super Skrulls. What do you think about that? And also, too, I have this shot from the trailer. I think their plans work out because it looks like a Groot arm to me, Amanda, if I ever seen one.
Yeah.
So the threat has now gotten bigger, Amanda. What do you think about this big reveal here?
That's exciting. I didn't pick up on that. I didn't think of Super Skrull. I didn't read the comics, so I didn't think there would be a larger implication. But I was just like, oh my God, now that you just said that, that's really cool. And I think that the Skrulls, like you said, they cannot end this season or this series without planting something in a movie, planting something on a larger scale.
Groot, arm. I like the wordplay, Amanda.
I did it. But I do think, like you mentioned, you said the Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
They can take over their powers, and I think that what if we have that as a first type of villain instead of like Doom, and we can build up to Doom later for introducing Fantastic Four. Like, I think that the seeds are here, not to be punny, but the seeds are here. But I, like you said, I think that's really cool, and there's a lot that they can do with that, so that is exciting.
It is. I'm very, because, and they're also too, because as we always talk about, Marvel never takes straight from the source material. They take, like, they adapt things. So like you just mentioned, the origins of the Super Skrull is so connected to the Fantastic Four, but this is kind of the MCU's way of building their own Super Skrulls. And like you said, I would imagine that it carries over beyond this particular show. So very cool moment, especially for the super sweaty comic book fans out there, of the planting of the seeds of, and not to only, you know, we just saw those, and also too, I didn't take the full screenshot, so a little screenshot of Extremis, the Iron Man 3 thing that they were building. So like they have, so it makes me wonder what else, you know, there was the, you know, aliens from Avengers, the Jatari, there was the, you know, all the writers from Infinity War. So like there's so much on the world that they could have taken. And it goes into this next scene here, Amanda, which was my favorite scene in this episode, the conversation between Rhodey and Nick Fury. And before we break down this scene, the thing that I really love was like, okay, why hasn't Nick called? Again, we know the Avengers aren't really Avengers, but why hasn't he called a Hawkeye, called a, I don't even know who Nick Fury would know, because he doesn't know Spider-Man anymore. So who would he call? Someone from Wakanda? I don't know who Nick at this point, because all the Avengers are gone. But
Captain Marvel, but you know,
don't even get me started. You know what I'm saying? Like, where is she? No one knows. Where's Waldo? But they do address why he hasn't called any of his super friends, because as that scene just showed, I don't want the Avengers to get involved, because then the Skrulls are fighting the Avengers. They can take the Avengers identity, and then we got terrorist Avengers, dark Avengers. So I love that explanation of why this is a Nick Fury story, because he doesn't want to get any other people involved, which I like that. I still think we're going to get some type of cameo, or some type of, whether it is Monica Rambeau, like we talked about, with her being friends with Gaia when she was young, or Captain Marvel, who is somewhere out there.
I mean,
or
it makes sense.
It makes, I think I lean towards more of Monica Rambeau, just due to the fact that the Captain Marvel, or the Marvel's trailer, showed that it seemed like Nick Fury and Monica already have like a relationship, because she's like, I'm gonna, whatever they were doing in the trailer, I'm gonna get closer to it, Nick. So it seems like they already have met each other. And plus, we know from WandaVision, he wants to meet you. So I would imagine that maybe Monica Rambeau, and not even including that she knows Gaia, that might be a bond or a reunion that we can get. So I would imagine she might be the big cameo, if there is one, in the show. But the scene, Amanda, Rhodey, to me, I love Don Cheadle, but Rhodey has been a second fiddle, a background backup dancer, and really hasn't done much in the MC. He's been here since Rhodey's been here since Iron Man 1, but Don Cheadle's Rhodey has been here since Iron Man 2. Not a lot has been given him, Amanda, but this might be one of probably my favorite scene. And this is even including scenes with him in the, you know, Iron Patriot suit. The back and forth between him and Nick Fury, Amanda, I was loving it, because it was so fire. I mean, first off, the tension's there. Rhodey's telling him, listen, man, you're America's most wanted right now. I'm trying to clean up your mess with what down in Moscow. And Nick's just, again, calm, cool, collective, sipping his bourbon and stuff like that. Just like, dude, come on. I've been doing this longer than you've been alive. So he's kind of playing off to Rhodey. Brody's like, listen, man, you're fired. You're fired. And he's like, they sent you to fire me, and then help me out, help a brother out. First off, for being a black man, I love that conversation of just like, we got to, you know, help me out. It's like, no, it's like, you got to earn that type of, I just love the conversation. It was so fire. And then they cap it off with Nick Fury, man, and looking at him being like, you think I'm done? I'm out. I'm in. Put that on a damn t-shirt, Amanda. I need
literally
on the wall. What I mean, let me get off my soapbox, Amanda. What did you think about this Rhodey scene versus Nick Fury?
I mean, you said it perfectly. Like you said it perfectly. You have like, they feel like giants in the MCU, you know? And I think that like as actors that we've watched in other films, and they're so freaking talented, to have them like going off and having this conversation is more important on like the grand scale of like who they are as actors, but it's really cool that they're able to do it in an MCU show, you know. And I love that. I think it was about time that they also, you know, they did have a sit down too, because I don't think they really talk to each other. Like you said, second fiddle, it's mainly through Tony, right? So it's not, I'm surprised it took this long for them to have any like solid interaction. I'm trying to think too, because
I'm just thinking of this. Listen, we 30 something films, 19 shows. I'm trying to recollect. It's Iron Man 2. Did him and Rhodey talk at all?
Maybe. Because I know it's no Avengers movie for sure. Like, I don't even think Age of Ultron, they had a conversation. Maybe at the party. I don't know. Nick wasn't invited.
Right.
He wasn't invited.
Amanda, and correct us if I'm wrong in the comments. I think this is their first time they've talked. At least I can definitely say for this extended period. They never had a scene like this. So that's for sure. But it's the first time I actually had a conversation. But I love it.
Yeah.
And like you said, two Titans. From in the show perspective, you know, two OGs in the MCU, but also two iconic actors that are fantastic in so many ways. And like you said, Amanda, they ate up the scenery, ate up the scene, and it made the wait worth it that they haven't the first time they have this scene, which I think we'll have more scenes of that nature in the future. But my question, Amanda, you know, putting on our who's a Skrull, was that Rhodey? Thinking of Ross and how he was so dismissive, because when Nick tells him the aliens are here, there's an invasion, Rhodey was like, yeah, I know about it. You know, 15 years ago, I was a part of this project. And he was very dismissive because he's like, oh, Nick Fury, you're going to take out this threat. Only you can do it. I understand the tension there, but is it almost too forced? Is Rhodey a Skrull?
That's interesting. That's so interesting. Because the last time technically we see Rhodey was in Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Right, talking to Sam.
Yeah. And he was a bit off in that show too, if we're looking at it now. So it's entirely possible that he could be a Skrull.
And he was, I think about to episode 1 when he's talking to the president. You know, Nick Fury is not on Saber, Mr. President. He's gone AWOL. Like, he's setting the stage to make Nick Fury be this. Now, I will say, the only thing that kind of backfired on that whole theory is when he was talking to the world leaders. Rhodey could have threw Nick Fury under the bus, but he was just like, no, you know, it's just speculation that he was in Moscow. It was, you know, I need more evidence. So if he was a Skrull, he would have maybe leaned more into like, yeah, it's Nick Fury, lock him up. So there is like that kind of, and that's again the beauty of the show.
Never know.
You know, is he? So I'm right now thinking that this is our Rhodey. But I wouldn't be surprised if they set the stage for a fake Rhodey that might lead into his, I think it's a movie now, Armored Wars. It was supposed to be a show, but then they make it in a movie. I think that was the last thing I read. If it even happens, you know, just last week, they swapped all the count, you know, we got a writer strike. Who knows who's going to happen? Avatar 3 coming out in 2099 is ridiculous. So let us know in the comments, guys, was that our Rhodey? Was that a Skrull? And do we want to see more of these type of scenes between these two characters? I definitely do, because I love that scene so much. But go on from these big moments, these big character moments, we get over to my favorite character, which is Sonya, who is at this point in the episode, Amanda, she's interrogating or torturing this Skrull that they found in episode 1. And this is where the maturity of the show comes about, because she cuts off my man's finger and takes it another level. She puts this serum in him that makes his skin boil. And Marvel didn't pan away. They didn't pan away when she cut off his finger. Now, I'm not saying this is John Wick levels of like blood and things of nature, but this is the MCU that tends to shy away from those type of more mature themes. But they showed us this stuff. And again, Olivia Colman is just hamming it up. She's coming in there. Oh, this is thank you. I'm going to go ahead and take over now. I love all that. But what did you think about just the maturity of the scene?
I think it's about damn time that we have stuff like that, you know, and it's hilarious that it's Olivia Colman doing it.
Right.
But like you said, she's having fun with it. And it's almost like you don't believe it's Olivia Colman. you know, so that's why she's really selling the character, because she's not someone that would generally go for a role like that. So I think that's also important to show her acting chops. Not that she needs to show us anymore how bloody talented she is, just, you know, it's another thing that she tapped into. I think it's like, this is what's going to set Secret Invasion apart from the rest of the shows, because I feel like with Moon Knight, we got more character depth and there was a darkness within the character himself.
Right. And the themes were mature. I think it wasn't on-screen bloody. Well, we got a couple, but it was a very mature show versus you know, mental health and stuff like that.
So like, that's why I think for me personally, Moon Knight's one of my favorites. And then with this one, the violence in order to sell the threat of the, you know, of who Sonya is working with, of the Skrulls as well. Like, I think that is beneficial to the story, because I feel like the audiences are growing with the MCU. So I think that
100%.
the maturity level is there, and I think that they can tap into that. I think that there can be R-rated shows or TVMA, like you know what I mean, R-rated movies, and I think that's where we're going. So I was taken aback with that, but I'm here for it, because if DC can do it, you know, they've always been darker, DC. So I think that it's about time for Marvel to really tap into that.
100%. Because listen, that's the beauty of Marvel Comics. You can read Squirrel Girl, and you can also read The Punisher. You can read, you know, the Adventures of Spider-Man, but you can also read these dark themes and these dark characters. So I 100% agree with you, Amanda. You said we've grown up with Marvel. It's been 15 years since Marvel started. So that little baby in 2008 is a 15-year-old now. So we can have these more. And again, not everything has to be so broad. And everything doesn't have to be for little Bobby, little Timmy, little Susie. We can have our mature shows, right? So I totally agree with you, man. This whole show up until this point has been very dark and mature, but this seemed to me to show that they're leaning into the more spy espionage. And every time I see a spy film, there's an interrogation scene, there's a torture scene. So it's playing into the kind of tropes that we're used to in this genre, but then not so much in the MCU. So I'm glad that they're leaning into that. But they don't just stop there, because Gravik and his boys find the location of because they have an inside man, which I wonder who's working for him. Who's that inside man to give him, you know, the location there? But they find a location, and we're seeing headshots. People getting shot. I mentioned not John Wick, but there's some headshots. There was a knife going into someone's neck, going into someone's arm, into someone's sternum. So it was brutal. There was some brutality in that kill as Olivia Colman's, you know, she exits the scene. But they get their boy, and right off the bat, and this just kind of shows you, you know, Gravik is like, you know, what did you do before you come with us? What did you tell them? And he said, oh, nothing but lies. But we end up seeing that he did lie, because he gave them the location of where their safe house was, which leads us to the ending. We end with them killing that guy because, again, he gave them away. And this kind of shows you that Gravik is not Talos, because we know Talos is hesitant of hurting anyone, let alone his own people. Gravik, not so much. He's willing to to kill you if you go against his cause, or if you, which I will say 2 episodes in, Amanda, when they open the episode with him and his backstory, him as a kid, he's come from this tragedy of losing his parents and having his trust broken from Nick Fury. I do hope that there is more. I don't know if I want more flashbacks, but I do want more of just like, your promise was broken. I get it. But what is it that got you to the point that you're now willing to kill your own people and also killing other people? Like, what is it that makes him go that extra step to be this person that we see? So I do hope that we get a little bit more of that. But speaking of a little bit more, Amanda, in the episode with Nick Fury heading home, and he's driving up, and we see the Skrull that I think her name was Vivia or Vala or something. It was something with a V. We see that Skrull in their Skrull form, and Nick Fury enters the house, and she's in her, you know, beautiful black skin. And did you forget something? He puts on his ring, which alludes to this is Nick Fury's wife, which I think the only time he mentioned he had a wife in the MCU is Winter Soldier, when Cap came into his like house and he said something about his wife. Like, I can't remember. It was something wife related. I can't remember, but he did say something about his wife. This is his wife, Amanda. And I think I know the answer, but just to be clear, she showed up. She was in her Skrull form at first, but then when we came in the house, she went to her human form. I'm pretty confident because again, we know that she was a Skrull at the beginning of the episode. Nick knows that she's a Skrull, right? I'm not under the impression that she's a Skrull and he doesn't know she's a Skrull. He knows, right? Am I thinking too much into that? Because again,
I think so.
Skrull form, human form, when Nick's there, he's aware, right?
I hope so, because that would be devastating after everything he's been through. My God. I think that the line in Winter Soldier was like, I thought it was fake because he was trying to cover up after like getting shot up, and there was like the record playing, and then he was trying to type out the message to Cap, and I thought it was fake at the time. Like I didn't think of it, but now seeing that he does have a wife, and if she is a Skrull, it makes the most sense because he's been with the Skrulls for like 30
years. Yeah.
So for him to like have a wife who is a Skrull, it makes the most sense. So I don't think that they would do a fake out like that, because my heart would break. I think that would just be, because
if there was a fake out, you would have saw her human form, and then later on in the show, you would probably do that she's a Skrull. But yeah, I think I'm playing devil's advocate because I think the reason she probably went there, and I hope Nick is not like weirded out about his wife being like, it's like one of those people in relationships, like, don't come home until you got your makeup on and all this stuff. I don't think Nick Fury's like that. I just think that she probably did that because she might didn't know who was walking to the house, like the mailman walking into her house, and she didn't want them to see her human form. Or it's just showing that it's, I don't know why she would change into human form, if I'm being honest with you.
I think it's for a visual cue for the audience.
Okay.
I think it's more so just for like the audience to be like, damn, he was married to a Skrull. It's more for us than I think in context. Yeah. I
got you. No, it makes sense. It makes sense. And like you said, too, I think it makes sense that he would probably marry a Skrull, because I'm thinking about in episode 1, it was like a quick, like, joking line. They're in the kitchen. Talos says that I don't know how it came up, but it talked about good looking or something, about like looks or something. And then Talos says, I'm considered a good looking Skrull. And like Nick Fury says, I know me some good looking Skrulls, and you ain't one of them. So I assume he's talking about his wife, being a beautiful Skrull or something like that.
Aww.
But it makes sense. I wonder if they have Skrull babies. Like, does Nick Fury have any kids?
Yeah, how does that work?
What if, I was just going to break my mind, but I was like, what if Gravicus but no, we already know he's not his son.
Could you imagine? It's a possibility. Anything's possible here.
Anything's possible. I'm just trying to do it wouldn't, I guess it wouldn't make sense, because in 95, Gravik was already born, and he met the Skrulls in 95. So he wouldn't, Nick Fury never met a Skrull prior to that. So, but I wonder if he does have any little Skrull babies running around in the CIA and in the SWORD or whatever. I think this episode overall, man, as we wrap it up, I very much enjoyed episode 2 more than 1. And we talked about episode 1 had its moments. It's establishing the show, establishing the tone. But I think it pairs. And it kind of sucks because we obviously saw episode 1 and 2 as like one piece, back to back. And the audience at home, I'm very curious on the reception on how people will receive episode 1, and if they're gonna. It's MCU. I know people are gonna watch it, but I wonder with episode 1, in my opinion, was a little bit more slower pace, a little bit more slow burn. But I think episode 2 is a good companion piece to episode 1 because it built the characters, built the relationships, and then we see some of the ramifications of episode 1. So episode 2. So I'm very curious on the reception because, again, we're pre-recording this, but I personally enjoyed episode 2 more than 1. Any final thoughts from you, Amanda? Any final theories? And is there a character in the show we talked about? We had our guesses about how long Ross has been a Skrull. Maybe Rhodey's a Skrull. Is there a character in this episode that might be a Skrull that hasn't been revealed quite yet?
Oh, wow. Maybe Nick Fury himself. Could you imagine? What's changed from the blip? He's a Skrull. Like you don't know. It's a possibility. I don't know, actually. I think everything else that we've said has been on the nose of possible Skrull. I did like episode 2 better. I think there were better character interactions because everyone settled into their characters. And I felt like the writing was stronger in this one to flesh out what's about to happen in the series. So I liked it. I think they should have dropped episodes 1 and 2.
I think so too. I think the reason they didn't is because they only got 6, and they want to obviously get the viewership and keep people on Disney Plus. Which, last question, and obviously we've only seen the first 2 episodes, but we've had the conversation about which they're going to be doing later this fall with Echo, the weekly show versus just dropping on at once. Based on these first 2 episodes, do you feel as though this would have benefited from just binge, or do you think there's enough mysteries, theories to have that kind of weekly discussion as we move along?
I think given what happens at the end of episode 1, if they structure it that way where it's like kind of cliffhangery, which is what they've been doing even episode 2, finding out that he has a wife and it's a Skrull.
I
think it's all about how they structure the endings of the episode. And the importance of the character. No offense to Echo, but this is Nick Fury.
Right.
Like forget everyone else, like even Talos and Skrulls, like it's Nick. So I think that a lot of people are curious to see more about him, as we've been saying for the past 2 episode reviews. So I think that's what's going to bring people back just based on that.
I agree. No, I agree with that. I think there's enough meat on the bone. There's enough intrigue. There's enough mystery again. Who's a Skrull? Who's not a Skrull? How long they've been here? You know, super Skrulls, all that stuff. I think there's enough meat on the bone to make people want to watch this for the next 6 weeks. I'm excited to watch for the next 6 weeks, or I should say now 4 weeks. But I am very intrigued to see how they pick and choose moving forward with this experiment with Echo later this fall. Of like, this deserves to be, because I'll be honest, the Echo, there's nothing been, like, a lot of things have been negatively said about the show, of like the behind the scenes, how it all came together, and it almost feels like they're just dumping it out. Like, let's just get rid of it. Let's just put it out there and move on. But then there is, like, I think eventually it would have had to come to the point that not every show needs to be like, I don't think Hawkeye needed to be a week-to-week show. I didn't think She-Hulk, now looking at it, I didn't think that needed to be a week-to-week show. So I do think that there are certain shows that I don't want to say deserves, but kind of has that format that opens itself up to like that weekly discussion, weekly theories, building, letting you breathe between episodes. And then there's certain shows just like, let's just get over with. Let's
go, speed it up. I think that you have to kind of test how much story you do have for 6 episodes at the end of the day. And I don't want to bash Echo, but we're all watching Echo hoping for
Daredevil.
a Kingpin, a Daredevil, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what we're hoping for. And I don't think it was a whole thing with saving Daredevil and then Daredevil Born Again. Like, they were in the middle of it, and now they can't work backwards on Echo being like, we're not going to do it because they didn't get the specific rights for it. I remember the it was there, but that's why it was like an interim to hold off to get Daredevil, but that's the only reason, right? So we'll see, because if I'm being honest, and then we'll wrap it up here. Echo wasn't built up good enough for me to make me excited. I hope I'm wrong. I hope the show is like amazing, but we'll see. But this show so far, I wouldn't say is amazing, but I'm really much enjoying the first 2 episodes of Secret Invasion. And hopefully, if time will allow it, you know, myself, Amanda, and our homeboy Chris, we've been doing these conversations for almost 3 years. Hopefully, if our schedules align, we can all come together next week sometime for episode 3 and speculate, and obviously get Chris's thoughts on these episodes. But Amanda, I can't thank you enough joining me for not only episode 1, but obviously episode 2 of these breakdowns. You bring up so many fantastic points, and it's just always a good time to nerd out with you and to speculate and to just have a good time. So Amanda, if you want to let the people at home know, we're pre-recording this, so next week, you know, what do you have in line that week? It's always wonderful discussions. I learned so much from you too, E. So it's always a blessing. I will probably have, obviously, my episode 2 review and then my Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny review at the end of the week, kind of like Wednesday, Friday drop. I'll have that up. You guys can always follow me over at AMX Indie Reviews on Twitter, Instagram, and a Letterboxd. We have Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 coming up, and I'm really excited about that. So yeah, just keep it in line there and check out Candid Cinema on YouTube. Mission Impossible. As we're recording this, the reviews have been coming out. They've been great. I know. I can't wait. But right now, we got a couple weeks before that. But again, guys, thank you for watching today's spoiler review of episode 2. Let us know what you thought of this episode, with theories, Easter eggs, things that you all picked out of this episode that really stood out to you. And hopefully, like I said, if the schedules align, you will hopefully see myself, Amanda, and our homeboy Chris talking about the further episodes. But we will see. If not, we'll just get our Skrull versions to talk about these episodes in our disguise. But
Like, share, comment, subscribe. You all have been awesome, and we will catch you on the next video. Yeah.